Okay, let's dive straight into this explainer and unpack what is, without a doubt, one of the most polarizing and fiercely debated tournaments in sports history, the 2002 World Cup. Hosted jointly by South Korea and Japan, it was definitely a tournament of firsts. But, it's remembered today just as much for the sheer unbelievable drama that unfolded on the pitch. So, the ultimate question we're trying to answer today is really this. Was South Korea's absolutely astonishing run to the semifinals a massive triumph of extreme fitness, brilliant tactics, and home crowd energy? Or was it actually a symptom of deep-seated refereeing bias and institutional failure? We're going to dig into the facts, the data, and the history to figure out exactly what happened. Here is how we're going to break it all down. First, the knockout controversies. Second, conspiracy versus conditioning. Third, FIFA's fallout and reforms. And finally, enter VAR, mitigating bias. All right, jumping right into Section 1, the knockout controversies, South Korea's unlikely run. Let's see how an underdog nation completely shook the foundations of international football. To put this into perspective, before 2002, South Korea had never won a single World Cup match in 14 attempts. Not one. And then, suddenly, they are overcoming literal 150-to-1 odds. They beat Poland, they stun Portugal to eliminate them entirely, they knock out a totally star-studded Italian squad, and then defeat Spain on penalties. They became the very first Asian nation to reach a World Cup semifinal before finally falling to Germany. I mean, it was historic. But here is where things get really messy. Think about the sheer accumulation of highly debated decisions made during those knockout games. Against Italy, Ecuadorian referee Byron Moreno showed a massively controversial second yellow card to Francesco Totti for diving, and he disallowed a golden goal for offside. Then, against Spain, Egyptian referee Gamal Alcandor and his assistants disallowed two completely separate Spanish goals. One was for a supposed shirt pull, and another where the assistant referee incorrectly flagged that the ball had crossed the baseline before the cross. The absolute fury from the eliminated teams was just palpable. You had players like Spain's Ivan Helguera, quoted here, and Italy's Christian Vieri, who felt their rightful victories were literally stolen by officiating errors. They simply could not believe that so many critical match-deciding calls could go against them by pure accident. Moving to Section 2, conspiracy versus conditioning. Because the craziest part of this whole story is how these exact same matches were interpreted so differently. Really, depending on where you lived, you were watching a completely different tournament. European media outlets were screaming. Places like Corriere della Sera called it a dirty World Cup and openly accused FIFA of a conspiracy, suggesting referees were acting as hitmen to ensure the host nation advanced for financial gain. But over in South Korea, millions of fans, the Red Devils, filled the streets to celebrate a unifying national miracle. To them, there was no corruption. It was just the incredible result of relentless hard work, huge heart, and undeniable athletic superiority on the day. And to be fair, we absolutely have to objectively consider the tactical reality of Coach Goose-Hitting's masterclass. This guy demanded the entire domestic K-League be paused so he could have 4 full months of daily contact with his players. That is unheard of. They underwent brutal weight regimes and intense mental conditioning, so their relentless pressing style and supreme fitness literally wore down their traditional powerhouse opponents. It's highly probable this overwhelming physical pressure contributed to all that chaos on the pitch, forcing both the opposition and the referees into some really difficult split-second situations. Hitting's pragmatic response is actually a really sharp reminder that human error is just a fundamental variable on the pitch. From his point of view, the European teams were desperately looking for a scapegoat, instead of just acknowledging that they were outworked and outrun by a fitter, way more determined host nation. Let's hit Section 3, FIFA's fallout and reforms. Faced with this massive global uproar over footballing integrity, how did the governing body actually react? Well, the institutional fallout was enormous. The backlash was so severe that FIFA actually had to publicly acknowledge structural flaws, admitting to crucial mistakes by match officials. This controversy even led to high-profile resignations. Angel Maria Villar, the Spanish Football Federation president, literally quit FIFA's referees commission in protest. This completely forced FIFA president Sepp Blatter's hand, making him demand a top-to-bottom review of how referees were selected and designated. Blatter's realization here is absolutely crucial. He pointed to a massive failure in teamwork. These immense controversies weren't necessarily malicious, backroom conspiracies. They were potentially just disastrous communication failures. By mixing referees and assistant linesmen from entirely different countries, like pairing an Egyptian referee with a linesman from Trinidad and Tobago, they created serious language and chemistry barriers. And those barriers resulted in catastrophic misjudgments under the immense, crushing pressure of a World Cup knockout match.
So that brings us to Section 4. Enter VAR. Mitigating bias? Fast forward to the modern era, and we have to ask, has technology finally solved this 2002 problem?
Let's talk about VAR, the Video Assistant Referee. This was designed specifically to eradicate the exact type of blatant mistakes that sparked the outrage back in 2002. The goal is super simple. Have a dedicated team watch video replays in real time, ready to step in when a clear and obvious error occurs on the pitch, like a wrongly disallowed goal or a completely unfair red card. But does it actually work to reduce bias? Let's look at the hard data. There's this fascinating, rigorous study published in PLOS One that analyzed nearly 2,300 matches in the Brazilian first tier, comparing 3 seasons before VAR to 3 seasons after. They specifically wanted to see if the intense psychological pressure of a screaming home crowd, exactly like we saw at those roaring Red Devils in South Korea, still impacts modern referees when VAR is watching over their shoulder. And the numbers are really telling. The data proves a measurable drop. VAR successfully decreased the number of yellow cards awarded against away teams, dropping from an average of 2.55 per game to 2.30. It provides strong empirical evidence that when referees know they are being actively monitored by cameras, the subconscious bias against the visiting team actually shrinks.
We are all human, right? The human brain is incredibly vulnerable to the social pressure of a roaring 60,000-person crowd. It sways human judgment in documented ways. But the looming presence of VAR cameras forces a much more objective application of the rules. The increased external scrutiny literally makes referees second-guess that deep subconscious urge to please a massive, intimidating home crowd.
But of course, here's the catch. Technology is not a magic bullet. As the same data shows, VAR did not significantly change the rate of red cards. Plus, football managers are still constantly arguing about the subjective interpretations of the video. Furthermore, studies comparing matches played in empty stadiums during the pandemic to full stadiums prove that crowd noise still significantly alters match dynamics and referee strictness. Technology definitely reduces bias, but it certainly does not eliminate all human interpretation.
The 2002 World Cup will forever be remembered as this chaotic intersection of unbelievable underdog heroics and total officiating disasters. While modern systems like VAR strive to clean up the sport, human subjectivity absolutely remains. Ultimately, the next time you're screaming at your TV over a blown call, it leaves us wondering, can technology ever truly eliminate the human element of the beautiful game? Or are the intense debates and bitter controversies just an inescapable part of why we love the sport? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.